But was there also mistakes made, though, in the past? Because there was such a push for the language revival movement. And I mean, I just, because of this coming up this week, I started looking back at old archives of the language freedom movement back in the 60s, which was run by John B. Keane, who'd be our local writer down in Listowel. And like he was a passionate Gaeilgeoir himself, like he could speak Irish. He was a big supporter of the language, but he felt that making it, say, at that time as it was, compulsory to have Irish to get a job in the civil service was made it exclusionary. And even now you could say the fact you still need to have passed Irish to get into an NUI college is, something that is questionable,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think it's definitely the way it has been taught. I mean, it hasn't been taught like a modern language in the same way that... So I learned Irish. The best way to teach languages to children or for someone to pick up a language is a mix of formal instruction and immersion. And that's, I did a lot of stuff on second language acquisition when I was in university. I did sociolinguistics. And when immigrant children come over to a school that doesn't have their target language, the best way to get them in and integrated is to have formal instruction in their own language and then immersion. And that's what the Gaeltacht to set up like. They have similar programs, Quebec or whatever it is. We don't do that. What we've done up until very recently, I can't really speak about the curriculum now because I haven't been in school in 10, 12 years. But what we did was teach it like Latin almost, where it was like, here's some texts, here's the grammar rules and all that kind of stuff. We're very strict on the written language and the way it's read, but we're not actually going to focus on oral. We're not going to focus on actually how it's used as a method of modern communication. Like when I did my Leaving Cert, 20% of my grade was oral Irish and the rest of it was reading different things. And I'm all up for that. I love literature and all that kind of stuff. Lots of people do not like that and are not into it. So it's very, I could see how people would be resentful of that, in that the only method you learn this language is through dusty old text or is through analysis of literary text, when that's not what you actually like doing. And I completely understand that guy being like, I don't enjoy it. And obviously your education system, it should be, when you go to university, you pursue things you enjoy and you're passionate about, and that kind of helps you be more curious and things like that. I completely understand that kind of point of view. So I think it is how it's been taught. I don't know what kind of changes have been made, but from my primary school teacher friends, they do say that when they're teaching Irish to kids, they enjoy it because they're using games, they're using things that mean that, like, okay, you're using Irish, but you have a function to do it, you're doing something fun. And even I had some guy reply to me on Twitter being like, the only thing Irish has taught me is how to ask to go to the bathroom. But it's like, everyone knows that because you were forced to use it, as in that was it had a useful function for you to learn that sentence, and everyone now knows that sentence. So how do we incorporate that principle into actually teaching the language?
Given the idea that we all understand how important immersion is there a very good argument then for turning our primary school system into a Gael Scoileanna system?
I think there is, absolutely. And I know people think that our brains have only capacity for one language sometimes or whatever, but you go to other countries and they speak multiple languages. Nobody is not going to learn English anymore. Like, that's done. Like, it is the basically lingua franca of the entire world almost. Like, you have to learn English to succeed in business or international business or whatever. Most of our media is in English, all that kind of stuff. I don't see... Like, I know it sounds radical, but I don't see a real disadvantage to doing that. I think we're going to be fine. We're an English-speaking country, so why let's do it. You know, that's what I think.
You think it's something we could transform. I mean, it could actually potentially transform. Although there is I asked this to Julian Despon on Monday night from Conor na Gaeilge. Like, we have a huge network of Gael Scoileanna now, obviously. There's hundreds of them up and down the country. And yet you still don't bump into that many people speaking Irish on the streets. You know, that it doesn't seem to have translated into a massive amount of fluency in the adult population, despite people doing everything through Irish for 8 years of their childhood.
Yeah. And I suppose it's probably that thing of, like, you will always default to English because you assume everybody speaks English around you, in the same way that, like, if you've ever worked with Lithuanian people or whatever, they will always default to English even if there's other Lithuanian people there, as in, like, because it's the polite thing to do when, you go to the language that everybody speaks. So I guess you wouldn't hear it out on the street or whatever. But there's a friend of mine who she's fluent in Irish, and she will ring revenue in Irish because you get a shorter queue. There's things like that. So it's kind of like, right, we mightn't encounter it, but like Gael schools are still not as common as regular schools, and most people are still monolingual English speakers. So I guess you wouldn't encounter it as much, you know?